Great. So if you want to scroll down, so this is a bit about me. So I didn't do a journalism degree. However, I did do an English and drama degree, and it was kind of through the extracurricular activities I was doing, like writing for the student magazine and doing some very, very, very terrible podcast episodes that I really hope never resurface, and presenting for the university television channel, which again was quite bad because it was interviewing drunk people. So you could kind of imagine how that was. And it was kind of through doing that I realized I wanted to go into journalism. I wasn't really sure what type of journalism. I didn't really think broadcast. I thought more writing because that's what I was strongest at. But then in my third and final year at university, I applied for a BBC journalism trainee scheme. I really wasn't expecting to get it because throughout my whole 3 years at university, I had applied for work experience, didn't get anything. So I wasn't really expecting to get it. And then I applied for my one, I guess, postgraduate job and I got it. So I was on the BBC journalism trainee scheme for a year, and that's kind of where I've been since, really, just at the BBC. I'll kind of put my most proud achievement at the bottom as well, which is last year I made a documentary, and that was very difficult during COVID, just because of the nature of the documentary. And yeah, I'm very proud of that. So yeah, if you want to go to the next slide. So it depends if we've got many talkative people in here. We might have to skip this one, and that's fine. But how do you think we can make content for broadcast? You can either type in the chat box or maybe just come off mute and say, but first I can throw to you, Chandni, what do you think that, you make content for broadcast, but what do you do kind of day to day?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm sorry, when people ask me this stuff, it always takes me a second, even though it's literally every day. Making content for broadcast, it's a lot of just going out there and seeing what you can find and making sure that visually you're getting stuff that works. Like, I know this is something they drilled into us at uni. It takes an hour to make a minute of footage, so that I think there's more work that goes into it than people can think sometimes.
Absolutely, I totally agree. That's one thing I dislike is you can literally be filming for so long and it's literally only 2 minutes, and it's like we're literally filming for 2 minutes, but oh well, that's life. We haven't got any things in the chat, so I'm just gonna kind of move on. Oh, your phone can sometimes be your best bit of equipment. Yes, that is so true, Hannah. Yes, Lauren, a lot of prior research is really important too, whether that's, doing a pre-rec of the location, whether that's online or through Google Maps or in person. I definitely think, looking to see what something looks like is really important. And Hannah, your phone really can be the best bit of equipment sometimes. Mobile journalism is literally booming, and you could literally make broadcasts from your phone, and that's what we're going to be talking about later. Oh, and something from Catherine. Getting straight into it after research and just kind of doing the whole thing is important to get to know what to do. Totally agree. I think sometimes we're in our heads about something, after doing all the research, we're like, are we ready to go out and film this yet? And it's like, but sometimes actually just really throwing yourself in there and just, doing as much research as you can, even though sometimes that will be really, really limited, is super, super important. So yeah, thank you so much for all your contributions just now. So if we move on to the next slide, if that's okay. So here are some shameless broadcasting examples from me. So do you want to go to the production example first, women's football ban, and see if it works? And if not, then do you have... No, it doesn't exist for you. Okay. Just bear with us 1 second. Sorry about these technical difficulties, but we can go on to the next slide while we sort this out. If that works, we can do that. So how can you get into broadcasting? So this is kind of some of my tips, some of my suggestions, but I'm not sure if anyone already has a YouTube channel or has a TikTok. If so, do you kind of want to maybe say in the comments again? Does anyone do anything on TikTok, like news you can use, or not really? Or I know that's your expertise. So what you so you think you want to be a journalist, and that's your expertise. So why don't you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I don't think I have the time to put into doing like proper, because you know there are some amazing journalists who will break down the news stories into really like digestible, easy to access, easy to interact with TikTok videos, and their stuff is amazing. I guess because I don't have the time, I think, to do it well, because I think one of the dangers that's easy to fall into is not being able to tell the whole story when you do that. But some of my favorite examples are like Max Foster at CNN. I think he does such a good job at really breaking down stories in a way that still kind of you're telling the whole thing and getting all the information you want, but it's not also not like an overload or not kind of overly produced as well.
I totally agree. I think what he does is so easy to watch, and so, do you know what I mean? I feel like you don't even have to work in news to like that. And I definitely think that I definitely think you're right, and it's so true. Like, you don't want to cram too much in for people to not understand. And we've got a couple of comments in the chat. So Hannah says, I have an Instagram where I share the broadcast modules I'm studying at university. That's great, very useful. I think it's important that you kind of have that for personal progress as well, especially sometimes when you're feeling down that you're not going anywhere, or in your mind that you're not going anywhere. It's good to have this portfolio there. Lauren says, I have a TikTok and Insta for my course portfolio, but I'm not consistent enough. If you're on a course, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of difficult when you're studying to be consistent, but sometimes maybe if you can maybe one day a week schedule in a day where you film maybe 7 videos. I know that's a lot, but maybe like one every day you can post, but it's easier said than done. I mean, I feel very similar. I don't have enough time really to make my own content, I feel. So you're not alone. Darcy, I make TikToks for a motorsports blog and create news related videos when I can. That is really cool. I love that. That's so good. I feel like motorsports is such a fun thing to watch on TikTok, and I love the little edits that people do on there. Hannah Knight, I would love to follow your guys' TikToks if you at them. Yeah, definitely put your TikToks in. This is what it's all about, networking too. Catherine, I definitely want to expand my presence in these spaces as I've definitely fallen off. Do you know what? Same. I feel like a lot of us feel quite similar, so don't worry at all. So I've noticed that some of you guys are on courses. So going on, people are posting their TikTok, great. So yeah, I've noticed some of you guys are on courses, and my top tips are here, and I can see that one of your I can see that, oh, why is that? Oh no, sorry guys, I'm having some technical difficulties.
Sorry, I tried to join twice to be able to just see the chat on my phone, but it didn't work. So
oh, okay, no worries. I'll read it out to you if you want. Or but yeah, so I can see that some of you are studying. So one of my points on here on how can you get into broadcasting is joining your media society and see what you can do. At my university, they sometimes had, like, on Friday nights, on the nights out, they had like DJs or artists come in, and students would interview them. Can you get involved in that? Or can you ask, is there a possibility for this? I know some of you are based on London, it's maybe a bit different, but I don't know, maybe when people come in and do workshops, is it going to be, can it be incorporated into your sessions that maybe you can take this person aside and get a couple of things off them for your online portfolios? We've all established that some people have TikTok or Instagram pages, so I would say start a YouTube channel, Instagram page, or TikTok. Like I think Hannah said, we all have a phone, and your phone can literally be the most important piece of equipment you have, and you can even, I feel like sometimes there's such an emphasis on getting on the news and getting on television or getting on radio, and obviously that's such an amazing feat, but you can have an even further reach online, which is so cool. So I definitely think never underestimate your phone, kind of like we've discussed. starting your own platform, whether that's any of the above, or a website or a podcast. Writing articles. You're probably wondering, well, why would I want to write articles if I want to broadcast? I don't want to be in print or the press. But, sometimes people do read these articles from local radio stations or national radio stations, and they could ask you to come on and talk about your article that you've written. I know when kind of universities or colleges have a bigger budget, which it's annoying, but I know sometimes I've seen university students work with journalists from the Times or the Telegraph that kind of have this big budget that can do these deep dives investigations. So I think, it is really important that you do write for pieces as well. And even if you live near a local BBC radio station or like Heart radio station, I would even recommend maybe looking on LinkedIn for someone who's like the editor there, and just say like, look, I've written this really cool article about so-and-so about our area. I'd love to talk about this. Admittedly, it may be a bit hard to do that in London because BBC Radio London is quite a busy station. But if you're outside of London, or if you're home, say if you study in London and you're from somewhere else, I've noticed that the people who are kind of regional, the radio stations are a bit more regional, are so open to having these young people come on and talk about their ideas and stuff and talk about their articles. So definitely push yourself out your comfort zone and you can pitch those. Shoot your shot. If there's someone that you admire, why not send them a DM and ask if you can interview them? My advice would be maybe to find someone who's got common ground with you. So say, for example, you're from a certain town and like, I don't know, like the next big pop star or musician or I don't know, even an influencer, you could even interview an influencer is from your town. I feel like if you have common ground, they're more likely to kind of say yes. They might say yes even if you don't have common ground, but if you've got something in common, then definitely kind of shout that out and make them aware. I really want to interview Tom Grennan. I don't know if you music fans like know him, but he's from kind of where I live. He even follows me on Twitter, so I'm quite excited about that. I might have to shoot my shot and send him a DM. So yeah, stuff like that. Get involved with community radio. So community radio is, they're usually online stations, but some of them are on the actual radio as well, like FM, DAB, etc. So I think, get involved with the community radio stations, because often as well, they can teach you how to use the equipment. And sometimes, if you want to have a job in these big, like, news outlets and you want to work in radio, there are some transferable skills there. If you could already do certain things, that's quite an attractive thing to have. And also it's a bit of fun, community radio. You get to talk about the community, you get to talk about silly things, get to talk about serious things. And it does have an impact because people do listen to it. And, it's available through even like hospitals, like, hospital radio is a thing. I know a lot of people, there's quite a backlog for a lot of hospitals because everyone wants to get involved in community radio after lockdown, and they've realized kind of how impactful it is for the hospital patients. But definitely even look into hospital radio, because I think nearly every hospital has a radio station. So ask if you can shadow or something like that. Apply for internships, jobs or schemes. But if you don't feel like you have the credentials to apply for like a Guardian scheme or the Economist scheme or Telegraph or even the BBC, definitely do some of the above to kind of get some. I know someone who's just started freelancing at the BBC World Service, who started her own platform and her own podcast, and her job now at the BBC is reading bulletins. So even if you kind of show that, I've got my own initiative, I can kind of condense news in a really short podcast, or I can start a YouTube channel or an Instagram page, that's so attractive. Because if you think about it, there are people who are maybe a bit older than us, or people who are kind of, maybe in their 40s or 50s in journalism, have a wealth of skills, but our skills are different to them now. And we've kind of got that, that level up, if that makes sense. We were brought up with social media, with TikTok, with Instagram, whereas other people weren't. So I definitely think use that to your advantage. it may not even seem like a skill to you. Obviously, we kind of spoke about how you can get into broadcasting, but the slide after this is about people who have started their own platforms, and some that you might recognize. Shout out to See Watch Be Journalist. You know, Chadni has literally won awards from her platform, you know, or she's like award nominated journalist as well. And I just think it shows that, you know, this is only 2 years growth. What's going to happen in the next couple of years? So, you know, it is starting your platform. You may think, why am I posting? Why am I doing this? But if you kind of want to, and, you know, if you want to kind of have growth, and if you want to kind of, you know, just experiment and have a bit of fun, it's totally fine to have that platform, because it can lead to good things too. And then I've also got an SBTV logo there, so some of you may be familiar with Jamal Elliott, I can't even talk, sorry, Jamal Edwards, who recently passed, unfortunately, but he was the founder of SBTV, which is like a music channel, and it also did like articles, but you know, it found the likes of Ed Sheeran, Jessie J, Dave. So, you know, that platform was, I think, started through just a video camera and his phone. So, you know, never underestimate the power of your phone, like someone said. There's a football magazine here called Season Zine, which was started by a fashion journalist called Felicia Penham, and she interviews a lot of footballers for the magazine, but more, I guess, their human side. I think we see a lot of stuff about footballers or athletes in the, you know, the papers, online, but there's always a bit of kind of fun with this. And I think maybe in the last 3 years or so, it's got, I think, over 15,000 followers on Instagram, and they've been able to do very cool things, which is really cool. And then at the bottom there, I've got Sophia Smith-Gaylor, which I'm sure so many of you are familiar with. She definitely is a pioneering TikTok journalist. And I think it shows that, you know, people think TikTok is just dancing, you know, or just doing weird stuff. But actually, it can be a really useful tool to spread your journalism and spread, you know, just kind of your content. And I think, yeah, you can start broadcasting from your phone, literally. So, yeah. So next slide, please. Thank you. So I've got some broadcasting don'ts here. So say you have, you know, some of us already have our platforms, but say you've kind of taken some advice that you've got today. You don't have to, but say you have, and you're going to interview someone, whether that's a high profile someone or someone who owns the shop around the corner. Don't overpromise. You know, if you're interviewing multiple people as well, especially if it's for a news outlet, it's important to let them know that the interview, it might not make the final thing that you're putting together, because editors can and will cut things out. And if you're editing it for your own platform, just be very clear about that and let them know it's going out on this platform. You can watch it here, because you'd hate for them to be a mix up and they think they're going to be on like ITV 6 o'clock news or something. And it's like, oh no, it's just like, you're just on my Instagram platform, which is just as good. But you know, sometimes there can be miscommunication between people you interview or people you want to kind of have on your platform. Secondly, again, this is kind of newsroom tailored, this slide, but if you're in a newsroom and you don't understand something, definitely ask for help. You obviously do have to be a self-starter when it comes to broadcasting, but you can't know everything. There's no shame in asking for help. It's a lot better to ask for help than not. And if you're doing this on your own platform, maybe reach out to someone like Chadni, who has kind of already done this already. And maybe, you know, I'm sure she'll offer tips, like she'll offer some guidance, because she's done the same thing for me. So I'm sure she'll do it to you. And then lastly, I don't think you should allow contributors / interviewees to look at the piece before it goes out on your own platform, or whether it's for the university magazine or whatnot, because often people may want to kind of change things or input things, and then that's not your journalism, it's theirs. That's not your broadcasting, it's theirs. If it's obviously a very sensitive nature, then what I have done before is I've literally just called them on the phone and literally read it out. this is what I said about you, or this is what I said about our interaction line by line. Because even I know sometimes people have maybe even screen shared and it's just gone quite wrong. I've had heard some horror stories, and also if they, I feel like it's easier for them to, you know, that just if you read it out loud and they're just on the phone, I feel like your voice may be reassuring and calming to them as well. So yeah, definitely don't do that unless you really have to, unless it's a very sensitive nature topic, then of course, you know, but I would advise even then kind of doing it over the phone. It's a bit different if you're kind of working with, say for example, you're working on something and it's like a long-term project, and it's a video or it's an audio project, and say for example you're working with a presenter who is maybe an expert on the topic the documentary is on. It's a little different, like in that sense, like if they can offer some professional or expertise guidance, then you know it's good for them to see it. But again, that's very much, you can, it really depends. I think it's very case specific. But yeah, next slide please. So these are some broadcasting do's. So a lot of you have kind of said it already, but research. Sometimes there won't be a lot of time to do so, but if you can try and find out some key points, you're already in a good place. Second thing, if you're doing a live interview in a newsroom or your own personal channel, YouTube, Instagram, or just kind of on TikTok, and it's like maybe an Instagram live or something like that, go in with a checklist of questions or topics you want to get out of a contributor, and tick this off throughout the interview, whether it's like mentally or just like, you know, say for example, your phone's propped up here and you're just like nodding, but just maybe you can just write with your left or right hand, you know, kind of make sure that you're either making a mental note or physical note of what you've kind of got throughout the interview. Because it's, you know, when it comes to the end, for example, and you've noticed there's something missing, it's just like, oh no. And if it's like a crucial part, that's not good, very good. And what if the person doesn't have time? So it can get a bit hectic. So I would definitely try and make a mental note and just think beforehand, this is what I want to be covered, if that makes sense. So I'd also ask open-ended questions. If this is also, whether for any interview, actually, for anything, I'd always ask open-ended questions, because then you know, they can offer their perspective, and you know, it's not, you're not pigeonholing them or pushing them to say one definite answer. Often their imagination can flow and they can say whatever. And then I'd also try to get the interview on track if it is digressing, but obviously in a respectful way. If it's a serious topic, you know, they might want to talk about, you know, something that's happened about the serious topic, you know, years and years ago. But if you really only want to know about now, then obviously listen and, you know, give them words of reassurance, like, thank you so much for sharing that with me, but would you be able to tell me about XYZ, and kind of, you know, pull the reins in kind of respectful way. It's kind of hard to sometimes gauge when to, especially if you're tight for time, but it's a really great skill to have when you know, when you kind of, I don't want to say master it, but it is a good skill to have. And it is very difficult sometimes when you're in that situation, especially if someone is being very vulnerable or very emotional, and sometimes it isn't possible. You know, if someone's burst into tears, then it isn't, I guess, possible to kind of get what you want from them for that interview. And it's important to kind of give them their time and acknowledge that, let's come back to this, you know, tomorrow or later on, because this is obviously still a sore topic. But if you kind of can, you know, just make sure you can keep your interview on track and that it doesn't digress. So I'm saying here as well, try to familiarize yourself with editing software, such as Adobe Audition or Audacity. So some of you even mentioned Premiere Pro. I feel like some universities will have Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro or whatever, but definitely try and familiarize yourself with that, with any type of software. So I know Audacity is free, and I feel like, to be fair, Audacity is a bit too, I can't use Audacity, I put my hands up. I prefer editing audio on like Adobe Audition or just video software tools. Like it's really easy to edit just, you know, stuff for audio on Final Cut Pro or Premiere, and I definitely find myself doing that sometimes, but I definitely should master Audacity. But I know obviously costs can be a thing as well. But if you do have already access to these things, then just definitely play around and try to familiarize yourself with that, and Photoshop too. And then listen. So listen to kind of what the person is saying or what's going on around you, and have fun. It is a bit daunting, but if you can, have fun, try to relax, take a couple of deep breaths before, and it will go smoothly, I'm sure. Next slide, please. Thank you. So broadcasting add-ons. So start editing, whether that's reels, TikToks, anything. Like I said, we've grown up kind of with this, with social media, with these apps, and the fact that we can do TikToks or reels, that is an attractive quality. That's an attractive skill that people can have, and it seems so silly to us probably because it's literally second nature, but definitely just keep editing things, and definitely big up yourself on CVs and stuff, that you can do TikTok, that you can do reels, that you can succinctly sum things up on these platforms, because essentially that's what broadcasting is about, isn't it? Succinctly just like packing things in and telling people what's going on. Another thing I've added is, can you start filming? Obviously this is a bit more difficult because not everyone has access to cameras, but if you're at university and that there's cameras around, or you've got, for certain modules you've got to use the camera but you're going to put it away after that, definitely just, if you can, keep on filming, because it's such a amazing skill to have. You could literally do anything. Say for example you finish uni, or you're kind of you're freelance, and you want to get paid, you want to do something. If you can film, like, you could literally do anything, not even journalistic things, but you could be filming for campaigns, you can be filming for charities. I know someone who films for Battersea, is it Battersea Cats and Dogs Home, or Battersea Cats and Dog Shelter? I know someone who does that freelance, when if there are other freelance topics, are not topics, if there are other freelance projects on, there's little about, they'll just go to a charity and be like, can I do this for you, blah blah blah, obviously for paid. But yeah, so I definitely think, just if you can film, it's such a good skill to have. You could literally find yourself doing very random things. So yeah, so next slide please. So how to find your contributors for your content / broadcast. So if you want to interview people, or if you want to produce broadcasts or content that isn't just you and them, then here are some tips for you. If you're not doing an interview with an influential figure, you may be wondering, how do you find contributors? Well, there are many ways to find people: through niche / local Facebook groups. People on Facebook love to talk. We all know people on Facebook love to talk. So and they'll be the most randomest groups ever, literally. So if you can kind of, go on Facebook, or I didn't have Facebook, but I had to get it for work, but just create a Facebook if you don't already have it, for journalistic or broadcast or content producing purposes, because it will come in helpful for Facebook groups and stuff. Looking through Instagram hashtags and comments. I found people for Instagram comments before, for people like charities or for blogs sort of thing, and it's been very useful. The Twitter quote tweets as well is, if often people on Twitter love to talk as well, which I love. It's like my favorite app. But often if you see something, there'll be someone quote tweeting like, yeah, like this happened to me, or something like that, or they'll say something and you can be like, that's really interesting, let me see if I can kind of speak to them. So audio features on sites such as Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse, charities, Twitter likes, local newspapers / bulletins, through friends as well, and real life, being out and about. Maybe you might just want to go to an event one day, like whether that's like a sporting event or like a, I don't know what other events are there, like like an LGBT event or like a gender event, a women's equality event, say for example, that's kind of your beat anyway, you might want to speak to these people and hear what they have to say. And often, people are very welcome and friendly. Sometimes they might not want to be on, your channel or your Instagram or your TikTok, but like you can maybe create contact with them, and maybe in the future you'd be able to speak to them, or if not, it's just a nice thing you can have. You've had a nice conversation with somebody. So definitely, if you want to interview a specific person at an event for your topic that you're really interested in on your channel, like I definitely recommend going to these type of events. Yeah, next slide, please. Sorry, I feel like I'm kind of rushing because it's getting closer and closer to 7. So you've started your own platform. Now what? So be consistent if you can with branding or with posting or with whatever. Again, I get that we're quite busy. So if you can't consistently post, that's okay. But maybe make sure that your branding really stands out. And it may seem obvious, but if you're interviewing an influential figure, look at what is already out there and what topics they've previously spoken about, and see if you can find something new, like a new angle. So building upon this, if the interviewee is online, look at their Twitter likes. This may seem a bit weird, but if they've liked something, it's already in a public forum, and you may kind of find a new angle that's previously not been explored. Don't be creepy though. I don't know, there's a way to do it, but try not to do it creepily, because sometimes people might be like, oh, that's a bit weird. How do you know that? So create an outline ahead of time. What do you want people to take from this? Try and relax and look at what your favorite content creators and journalists are doing, but try not to mimic it too closely. Everyone has their own style, but you're great. So kind of, it's obviously really nice and really important to look at what other people are doing, but don't really feel the need to can't even talk, sorry, to mimic them exactly, because you're unique. You've got your own thing going on and you don't want to be like them. You kind of want to be like you. So yeah, so next slide, please. So here are some good general prompts for your platforms if you're more into content creating. So a roundup of what's happened that week, whether your niche is kind of film or football or like even like animals. I feel like it's a good, everyone loves a roundup, so it's a good thing to kind of do. This is what's happened, blah blah blah. This is what so and so said, and essentially, summing up what's happened in the week or in the day is essentially what broadcasting is. So you're already there. Did you know style videos? So like, finding out something obscure or letting your followers know something very obscure about what's happened in a did you know style sort of way. Engage with your followers. So if they leave a comment back, or like, and post and self-promo. It's very awkward, I think, sometimes, because you don't want maybe people to see it, but if who cares? Like, people aren't talking about you as much as you think you are, and if they are, that's kind of on them. You're just doing your life, let them live theirs, I guess, and be like negative. But I do think it's important that you kind of post and self-promo, and kind of don't be afraid to do that, because everyone is kind of doing it, if that makes sense. So next slide, please. And use your qualities to your advantage. I think sometimes when it comes to broadcasting, you can feel like because you're a certain ethnicity or a certain gender, or you come from, you're from a lower, like, middle class background, and in comparison to some of the people, who are in journalism, there are a lot of people who are very middle class, very posh sort of thing, and sometimes it feels like it's not the right place for people to be. It definitely feels that way for me sometimes, but I feel like you need to kind of use your qualities and what you bring to your advantage. If there was a story, or if there was something going on, a specific issue, someone who was from a certain area or is from a different class than you, they probably won't understand the topic as well as you will. So you'll be able to kind of really empathize and understand what's going on with that. And the same with maybe gender, sexuality, ethnicity too. Sometimes, when you are from a marginalized background, it does feel like it's very intimidating, but that is kind of your strength. You can use that, and you can, you know, reach those communities that don't trust the news or don't trust broadcasting or don't trust content. You can reach them by just being yourself, sort of thing. So definitely, you know, it's easy to think it's a negative thing sometimes, but it's really not. Like, society is the, you know, the thing that's making you feel negative about these things, and you're not, you're fab. So yeah. And then the next slide. So yeah, good luck. That's what I said. Good luck. So yeah, I feel like we whizzed through that, and I don't think I want to see this recording because I was just talking nonsense. But thank you so much. If anyone has any questions or comments or thoughts, or would like the presentation sent around, or would like to discuss offline, then that can be possible, but at like a later time probably.
So I think, yeah, I'm going to open the floor to any questions. If you've got anything to ask, drop it in the chat, and yeah, let me know if you did want the presentation. I mean, Kes, if you're happy with it, then I'm happy to share the presentation around, because there was a sickle cell documentary that we didn't get to watch, but it sounds really interesting. And I think it's always great to kind of keep an eye on what other people are doing, because aside from just watching factual stuff and getting news and new information that way, it's also kind of really good to build your own style and your own skills through learning what other people are doing. Like at work and the team I'm on, the reason my editing has improved so much in the last 6 months is because I look at what my colleagues are doing, and things that they do well, I'll kind of learn from that and incorporate that stuff into my own work. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. While we're waiting, I'm going to ask one really quickly. What do you think is like the biggest thing that you've learned? Like, has there been a mistake that you've made that you now will never do that again because you learned from it? Or yeah, has anything like that happened? Oh, sorry, you're on mute.
Thank you. Classic. Back to March 2020 with the sorry, you're on mute. I remember one time I said like the wrong place so when I was writing a script for the presenter, and I said the wrong place. I think the person was from Woodford, and I said Wood Green, which is a part of North London, if you aren't aware. And Woodford is kind of like East London, or like, I don't know if some people don't even consider it London. And that like, I can't remember how it went down because I was just so embarrassed, and so I've tried to block it out. But I remember the presenter said, and this is so and so from, you know, Chingford and Wood Green, and it was like, no, it's Woodford. on national radio for Radio 4, by the way. I must add that Radio 4, so a lot of people do listen to that. So I was like, oh no, this isn't good.
All I'm going to say is at least it wasn't you reading that out and it was someone else's job, because imagine, well, we've not had any questions through, but actually no, I spoke too soon. Hannah's come in with one. How did you get your first opportunity at the BBC? That was the apprenticeship scheme, right?
Yeah, so I applied for, so the schemes now have changed so much, but I was on a 1-year scheme, but now I don't think they're schemes anymore. I think they're all apprenticeships. But I applied for a journalism trainee scheme at the BBC, and that's kind of how I've got into the BBC, if that makes sense.
And there are so many people who, because obviously there are loads of applications last year. I think if you check on LinkedIn, for anyone who's interested, find people who are on the scheme. In my experience, people in the industry are quite happy to help. So if you are thinking about applying, it's always an idea to look at people who have gone through it before.
Yes, definitely recommend doing that. People will respond to you, but they might not, but it's likely they will. Like, if not, just ask someone else, and someone else will definitely respond to you. And if you're in your studies, there's BBC work experience as well that comes up, but you have to apply for it on the website. I don't think it's open at the moment. I know one of the schemes definitely is. I think it's called the Advanced Journalism Apprenticeship Scheme, which I think is the equivalent to what I did. I'm not really sure. But the applications are still open for their schemes, if that makes sense. But yeah.
And yeah, people should definitely check them out. It's such a good opportunity.
Yeah, and not just there though, like, you know, Channel 4, ITV, like there are loads of good journalism schemes. So yeah.
I think that was everything. Did you have anything that you wanted to plug before we go?
No, not really. But I hope everyone's well. And yeah, I know obviously things are still a bit strange. So I hope everyone's staying as well as they can. And you know, if things aren't going the way you want them to journalistically, you know, no one talks about their L's online. No one talks about, you know, how they applied for a job and didn't get it. It's very rare. So don't compare yourselves to them, if that makes sense. These people who you feel like are just going from height to height and are always getting jobs, because it's likely they're not. There's, you know, I mean, they're just, what you see online is so different to how it's for people behind closed doors. And you know, in journalism, sometimes you'll get so many knockbacks, but that one yes will literally just uplift you and change everything for you. So yeah, so definitely if you've received rejections recently, try not to self-internalize it, because you're great. It's just, you know, it's part of life.